Hello and welcome to this third lesson on sampling, and today we're going to be looking at stratified sampling. So let's jump right in. So stratified sampling is when an entire population is split into groups and then a sample created from that population will have the same proportions as the original population. So what that means is if we look at a year group and if there were more boys than girls in that year group, when we make a stratified sample, we'd have to make sure that the proportion of boys to girls was the same. For example, if 3/4 of the population were boys, then that means the sample size, 3/4 of them must also be boys. So that means the sample size is proportionally representative of the original population. So let's look at a few examples. So we're told there's 300 pupils in the school, and I want to select a stratified sample of 50 pupils. How many pupils should I include in my sample? So the formula we're going to use for this, so if we're going to talk about three things here. We're going to talk about population, which is who we're surveying. So the population is the total number of people who we would be looking to survey. The group size is the proportion of the population that we're looking at, that's relevant to our survey, relevant to our sample. And the sample size is the number of people we're looking to include in our stratified sample, okay? So for this example, we read the question first. We want to select a stratified sample of 50 pupils. So what that tells us that the sample size is going to be 50 pupils, but that also tells us that because we're looking at pupils in total, so we're include the entire population is all of the pupils in this school. And at the start of the question, we're told they're 300. So our population is 300. And then the group size is what the question asks us about. And this says, how many girls should I include in my sample? So this means if the population is 300, there are 180 girls in the entire population. Therefore, the group size is 180. So once you've found these three things, the whole population relative to the question, it can change sometimes. The group size, which is the group we're focusing on, which is what the question is asking you for. And then the sample size is how big a stratified sample you want. And the formula for this is going to be group size. So group divided by population multiplied by sample size. So group size divided by population size multiplied by the sample size. Then all we do, we just plug these numbers in. So the group size is 180. The population is 300. And the sample size was 50. And if you type that into a calculator, well, you can either do this step by step. So 180 divided by 300 would be 0.6. So then we're left with 0.6 times 50. And then if you do 0.6 times 50, you would get 30. So that means there would be 30 girls in the sample, in the stratified sample, okay? Say in the strat sample. Okay, so just remind yourselves, the formula is the group size divided by population size times by the sample size, and that will tell you how many of that group will be included in your stratified sample. Okay, let's have a look at another example. So there's 600 pupils in a school. I want to select a stratified sample of 40 pupils. How many boys should I include in my sample? So again, the three things we need the population size, we need the group size, and we need the sample size. So the population, so we're looking at a stratified sample of 40 pupils. So we're looking at all of the pupils. Well, there's 600 pupils in this school, so the population will be 600. For the group, the question is asking us about how many boys would be in the sample. So the group is the number of boys, there's 245 boys, 245 boys. And the sample size, well, we're after a stratified sample of 40 pupils. So the sample will be 40. Sample size is 40. So again, we'll look at our formula. So we're looking to do group size divided by population size multiplied by the sample size. And that will tell us how many boys we're including in our survey. So chuck the numbers in. So the group size is 245, population is 600, and we're going to multiply that by a sample size of 40. And rather than equaling that, just get a calculator out. So you do 245 divided by 600. That will give you 0.4083 recurring. I'm going to times that by 40. I'm just writing this step by step out just to show you what I'm doing, but feel free to just times this answer by 40, times it by 40, and you will get 16.3 recurring. Now, obviously, we can't pick 16 1/3 boys, okay? So we need to round to 0 decimal places. We need to round to the nearest whole number, okay? So that will equal 16 boys in stratified sample. And that is nearest, call it nearest integer, nearest whole number, nearest integer. They both mean the same thing. Okay, so remember we can't have decimals because we can't have 16 1/3 of boys. It has to be round to the nearest number. Okay, so let's have a look at another example now. So here we got 900 pupils in year 7 and year 8. We have our table here showing year 7 and year 8, how many boys and girls there are. So I want to select a stratified sample of 40 from year 7. Okay, so already this is telling us, read the finished question, sorry, so how many boys and girls should I include in my sample? So if we look at our 3 points again, so we want population, we want group size, and we want sample size. Okay, so now the population here is going to be slightly different, okay, because this is asking us, we need a stratified sample of year 7s, stratified sample of 40 from year 7. So our population is going to be all of the year 7s added together. So first of all, you need to add up those two numbers, so 289 plus 190. So we know population is 479. I'll just put 479 there. So this is how many year 7s there are in total. Okay, so this is our new population. And we're just going to skip group a second, and our sample size, we're at a sample size of 40. That's that. Now the group size is asking us for boys and girls. Okay, so if we just write B for boys, well, there's 289 boys, and we'll do G for girls, and there are 190 girls. Okay, so we're going to have to do this. We're going to have to do this formula twice. Okay, so let's do the boys first. And just to remind yourself, I'm just going to write the formula up here. It is group size divided by population times by sample size, okay? So all these words, group size, population size, sample size, okay? And that will give you your proportion. So for the boys, first of all, we've got 289 boys. The total population is 479. And we're going to multiply that by our sample size, which is 40. And if you press equals on the calculator, then if you type those numbers in, so 289 divided by 479 equals, times that by 40, and you should get 24.1. But we don't like that. We need to round it to nearest whole number. So let's change that to 24. 24 boys, nearest integer. Okay. And then we'll do the girls now. So girls, just block this off. So again, it's the same as group size divided by population times by samples. There's 190 girls in year 7, 190 divided by 479 times 40. And that is equal to, type in your calculator, 479. And that will be equal to 15.9. But we can't have 15.9, so let's just take this down here. So that'll be 16 girls. That's the nearest integer. Now, what some of you might have realized, if you're asked, if you're asked a question about of all of year 7, and there's only boys or girls in that question, and you're asked to find how many boys and girls you should include in the sample. Once you calculate the number of boys, which is 24, some of you may have figured out that actually, because there's 40 in the sample, that the rest of the people must be girls. So if there's 24 boys, 24 plus something is 40, and that's 16. And we can double check that. If we work out properly with a formula, we can also see that we've also got 16 girls. So actually, if there's only 2 different groups in your population, once you've worked out the first one, it should be very easy to work out the second one, because both those groups, the sample size of those groups, should add up to the total sample size. Okay, but always use the whole formula just to double check you've got the right answer. Okay, let's look at one more example. Okay, so last example now. So here we're told there's 900 pupils in year 7 and year 8, and we want to select a stratified sample of 70 girls. How many year 7s and year 8s should I include in my sample? Well, let's just go over this again. So first of all, we've got our total population. Then we've got our group size. And then we've got our sample size. So in this case, because we're surveying girls, our population will be the total number of girls. So 190 plus 210 is 400. So our total population is 400. Our group size, well, first we're doing year 7s and then we're doing year 8. So year 7s, there are 190, and year 8s, there are 210. And the sample size is 70, because we want a sample of 70 girls. Just remind yourselves that the formula is the group size over the total population size multiplied by the sample size. Okay, so let's plug those numbers in. So let's do year 7s first. So our group size for year 7s will be 190 girls in year 7, and there are 400 girls total. Multiply that by 70. Oh, not 700, 70. And if you do 190 divided by 400 times 70, you should get 33.25. We don't like that because it's a decimal point. We can't have a quarter of a person. So we're going to have 33 year 7 girls. Remember, this is to the nearest integer. And we do year 8 now. Again, we need to do group size divided by population. Well, there's 210 year 8 girls. There's 400 girls in total. So, not equals. We're going to multiply that by the sample size, which is 70. 210 divided by 400 times by 70 is equal to 36.75. We don't like that because it's a decimal, so we're going to round it up to 37 year 8 girls. And just to remind you, that is to the nearest integer. Okay. And just to double check this, you want to make sure, because our total sample size has to be 70, just double check yourself. 33 plus 37, that does indeed equal 70. Okay. Now there are very rarely, but there will be some times when you can do everything correctly. You can do this formula, and when you round up the numbers, your two or your 3 final answers won't add up to the sample size. and that's just because of rounding, and that's just because of the quirks of rounding, really. So just double check every time that the numbers do add up to the sample size. And if it doesn't, if you're one above, or you'll usually be one over, all you need to do is take away one from one of the groups, and you basically need to pick the group that has been changed the most due to rounding. Okay, so yeah, just bear that in mind when you're doing it. Okay, there's no examples of that in these questions, just something to bear in mind. Okay, but always make sure you double check that the numbers add up to your stratified sample size. Okay, so here comes the main task. So here's the main task now. So pause the video and have a go with these questions. Take your time to find out, to recognize what the whole population with regards to each question is, or the group size with regards to each question is. And the stratified sample size is the easiest part, because that's the only number in these questions. Okay, so pause the video and have a go with these 5 questions. Best of luck. Okay, and here are the answers. Very well done if you got them all right. And if you got any wrong, hopefully the first step you should have done to check your answer were right, to make sure both the numbers add up to your stratified sample size. Okay, so well done if you got those right, and let's have a look at the checking question now. So 258 students, each study one of the 3 languages. The table shows information about these students. So we're told there's boys and there's girls, and there's German, French, or Spanish they study. A sample stratified by the language studied and by gender of 50 of the students is taken. So very oddly worded, a stratified sample of 50 pupils is taken. Okay, and it's taken into account their gender and the study they sample. Okay, so a stratified sample of 50 pupils. Work out the number of male students studying Spanish in the sample, and work out the number of female students in the sample. Okay, so this question is asking you to figure out if there's 50, if all of these pupils are included, or will be taken into account for a stratified sample of 50 pupils. How many male pupils who study Spanish will be in the sample, and how many female students will be in the sample? Okay, so it's a lot to take. It's a very tricky wording. Have a double check the question again, have a read of it, and have a go. So pause the video and have a go now. Okay, best of luck. Okay, so first things first, let's break this question down first part. Okay, so the first one is we need to work out the number of male students studying Spanish in the sample. Okay, well, if we were to think about, so let's use red pen for this. So male students studying Spanish, well, that is a grand total of 26. Okay, so we want to find out how many male students who are studying Spanish would be in a stratified sample of 50 people. So let's just remember our formula. So we've got group over population times by sample size. Okay, and for question A, the pop is everyone, 258. The group size is 26, and the sample is 50. Okay, so using the formula, so 26 divided by 258 multiplied by 50. And you just type down your calculator, 258 equals times 50. That gives you 5.04. That's the 2 decimal places, but we're going to change that to the nearest whole number. So that will be 5 male Spanish. Okay, so we know that there's going to be 5 students who are male and study Spanish in this stratified sample of 50 pupils. Okay, so now let's change to a blue pen. And now we need to work out the number of female students in the sample. So that means we're looking at all of the females here. Okay, so it might be helpful to add up the numbers first. So 25 plus 48 plus 62, that is 135. So before we work out anything, let's remind ourselves, what is the population? Well, that's the same as the whole question, because it's a survey of all the students. The population is 258. The group will be the number of girls, and there's 135 girls. And the sample, once again, we're still talking about that sample, stratified sample of 50, so it's that. We've got our formula, group divided by population times sample. So the group this time is 135 divided by 258 times by 50. And if you check those numbers in your calculator, you should get 26.16. And then there's some more decimals after that. And if we round this to the nearest decimal place, we would get 26 female 26 female students. Okay, let's do that a bit better. Female. Okay, so very well done. The hardest part of this question, I'll be honest with you, is actually figuring out what they're trying to ask you, because it's worded very uniquely, shall we say. Okay, but very well done. You got those right. And that's it for sampling. Okay, so there's only 3 types of sampling. We've done systematic, random, and stratified. Okay, so very well done. I hope you enjoyed that lesson, and we'll see you next time. Bye now.